Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast where I bring you the best and brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you drive your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. My guest, Jeyanayagam, is currently the Vice President and GM of the direct-to-consumer business at the Clorox Company, which includes full P&L responsibilities, supply chain, fulfillment, soup to nuts. This guy does it all. I'm sparing you a lot of details on that because it gets real techie. And prior to Clorox, Jackson was the chief marketing officer for e-commerce startup Box, where he oversaw growth, performance media, and brand. And in 2018, Jax was named to the Forbes CMO Next 2018 list, which identified the top 50 CMOs, redefining the role and shaping the future. And previous roles, Jackson was the head of digital for Chipotle, responsible for leading all digital marketing. And sure, he ate his body weight in burritos daily there. We'll talk about that. And he has a long resume, and we're going to get into that. We're going to unpack that and talk about how he got from where he was to where he is now. And personally, he serves on the board of directors for Goodwill International, as well as Peace Direct, and an advisor for 3 high-growth startups, Dynamic Signal, Bounce X, and Miles. So we're going to get into it. I'm thrilled to welcome Jackson. Welcome to the podcast, my man.
Thanks, brother. Good to be here, man.
Awesome. So we are recording this. We'll do a little time capsule. Today is the 2nd day of October in 2020. Last night, 1 a.m., our president and first lady were diagnosed with coronavirus. It is crazy. So when this episode airs in a few weeks, we'll look back and we'll just kind of see what's happening here. Before we get into your career story, quick prediction on what the hell's happening in American politics. I'm throwing a curveball. We're here. We're live. We're doing
Yeah,
this.
you did. I mean, I don't know. Come November, I follow it deeply. I sometimes get disappointed by it, like many people, just because I think at least up ballot, right on the presidential side, the election, we'll find out in 6 weeks, comes down to 7 states. And that's disheartening if you live in New York, right? Down ballot, we can all still have an impact, but it's concerning and just frustrating that it's only 7 states, give or take, that really are going to decide the elections, given where it's shaking out. So, 4 years ago, I thought one thing was going to happen, like many of us, and then the exact opposite happened. And I'm seeing the repeat. I'm seeing the media say the same things. I'm seeing the media say the same themes.
Right.
I'm seeing the exit polls and all the polling be almost identical. And I worry that the same thing is going to happen. So I think there's a lot of people out there who aren't voicing their opinions right now and are going to go to the ballots and voice it that way. And who knows? But that's concerning a little bit, I think.
Yeah, just get on vote. So let's switch gears here and get back to you. You're the guest of honor today. You have an incredible career. You've had an incredible career, some real high profile titles, tons of responsibility on your shoulders, but it all had to start somewhere. Take us back. We don't have to go into super details. We don't want to know. We could assume what you did in college. But what did you study in university? And what were you kind of thinking when you were in school, what you wanted to do when you got out?
Well, so I swear a lot, so I'll try to limit it.
You could curse here.
All right, perfect. I was.
Think of it like the Howard Stern show, man. Minus a few things here and there.
Yeah, minus a few things. Yeah. Dude, I was a shit student. I was never a good student. I didn't like homework. I obviously believe in education. Think it's important. I have 2 daughters, 5 and 16 months old, so that'll be important for them. But I was not a good student, period. But I did, after a few majors and after basically an academic probation for a couple of years and on the verge of being kicked out, I figured it out. You too? Okay, so you and I share a lot in common. I have a whole other, we talk about the education system and what the parameters and benchmarks are for what's success and what's not. I think there's a lot of gaps there, at least in the US. But and anyway, I ended up being a sociology major. I majored in race relations, which was a very passionate topic of mine, still is, always has been. Being a minority, has grown up in all different environments and standing out in a lot of different ways, son of immigrants and so forth. But I would say that I didn't kind of follow, I didn't want to be a teacher and I didn't want to be a social worker. So I knew, like, really, what else are you going to do, for the most part from a traditional standpoint, sociology. But I minored in communications. Because I figured I had to do something more practical, and fell into a job despite a crappy GPA. Actually, Adam, I took the LSAT because I thought I had to. My parents are good old, brown Sri Lankan parents who be a lawyer, a banker, a doctor, something traditional. Yeah. So I
Something
took
they
that.
could be proud of, right? So they can brag
Exactly,
about to
right?
their friends,
Yeah,
right? They got to brag about Jack.
That's exactly right. That was the only reason, right? So I took the LSAT, bombed it. I think I got like something 150 something, got waitlisted to 2 schools, accepted to none. It was the best thing that could have happened to me, only because
Yes,
nothing
I
against
don't have to do
lawyers.
any of this shit. I don't
Oh,
have to
dude.
go anywhere.
And how
I
many people
can't.
do you know? I know plenty of people who went to law school, got the degree, are in debt, and left, don't practice law at all, and regret it,
It's
right?
unbelievable how much law school costs. My wife's an attorney, and
Ugh,
finally, I get it.
it's insane. So I didn't do that. I barely graduated, just 2.97 GPA. I'm like, well, I'm not going to grad school either, which I'm good with. I never did. And I fell into PR, man. Like I was in a fraternity, and my big brother in a fraternity was like, dude, you like throwing parties? So I was social chair and then president. I'm like, yeah, I love throwing parties. Like, you should get into PR. And Adam, I tell you this, yeah. For the first 4 years of my job, I didn't throw one effing party, man. Like I did faxes. I was 2000, right, when I started making
Faxes. For all those youngsters out there, we used to have to put a piece of paper into a machine and send it over the phone line.
Oh man, yeah. And I was calling journalists and media. I didn't know what I was doing, making 23,000 a year in Portland. I was partying a lot, right, with my friends, just trying to figure it out. Didn't have any kind of, I was ambitious, but I didn't know where I wanted to go and how I wanted to do it. Yeah, I did that for a few years, and I ended up on the T-Mobile team at the same agency. Moved to Seattle.
WE, right?
Yep, that's right. And that was awesome, dude. Because if you remember, I'm going to age myself for your crowd, but this T-Mobile sidekicks. Remember those back in the day?
Was that the horizontal phone?
Yep, and it flipped up the screen, and it was like in every
Those are
hip hop
cool.
video.
I still say the Motorola StarTech is the best phone ever created.
Yeah, that 2-way was sick. Yeah, the 2-way and that sidekick were
awesome.
like the devices of hip hop and athletes and Hollywood. So built our name on that, and we did a lot of influencer marketing, and that kind of put me into. Then I started throwing parties. Ironically enough, I got to throw some parties and work with like young talent and influencers, and we were also doing a lot on social media. This is 2005, dude, 2006.
Right. So you were friends with what's his face on MySpace, right?
Yeah, Tom. Yeah.
Tom?
I was launching the sidekick on MySpace.
Tom's my bro.
Now. Dude, Tom's kind of making this weird comeback. Like, he gets referenced all the time in like social media memes and stuff. And that's when we did some really cool things. So that time, no one was doing social media marketing, Adam. So Facebook was still private, only if you're in high school or college. MySpace and Friendster were around. So no one knew. There was no agencies. And we started launching T-Mobile Sidekick on Twitter. We launched T-Mobile's account on Twitter. I created a Wikipedia page for them, helped launch on MySpace. And then all of a sudden, it blew up on me. I'm like, wow, this digital marketing social media thing is
something
legit.
going on here.
Yeah. And then the next 4 years, I figured out what I was going to do, and I moved to New York in the middle of right before the recession, 2008, July. Recession hit in October, and like an idiot I am, in February of 2009, right when everyone is like just trying to hold on to their job, I left a great job of 9 years to go to another job and take a 10% cut on the salary. They're like, hey, everyone here is a 10% pay cut, so your salary is X minus 10%. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do it. Because everyone told me not to. Everyone's like, you're crazy. You're gonna be the first one fired. It's like, everyone's losing jobs left and right. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not happy, and I got to be happy. And I know this.
Is it that the ultimate, like, you don't know that super early on? I mean, to cut you off there, but like, is it that one of the things that you don't know early on, right? Because early on, you're taking a job because you feel like you have to. You feel like you have to do something. You have to work. But it's not until you get a couple roles in, then you realize, how important happiness is.
Dude. Yeah, for so much. And obviously happiness, as you know, is a lot of things that influence that, right? Beyond work, but work is a big part of it, especially if you're single and you're living in New York, dude. Like, you know how it is. Like, work and your person are the same, right? It's very hard to separate.
Yeah,
right?
when you're single, when you're out there dating, you're in a major market, right? You're hanging out, you're young, you don't got annoying little kids freaking bothering you all day.
You're hustling.
Those are the good old days.
Oh, dude, my 30s in New York was just
that was
awesome.
before social media, when people could capture everything on their phones, right? That's where you could get away. That's where you could get away with some shit.
Yeah,
so I mean, the camera phone ruined everything. Cameras
they
ruined fun. Cameras ruined fun.
That should be your next podcast, man.
Cameras
ruin fun. Very true, though, man. Very true. And but at least I got to partake in that a little bit. And Dude, I was hustling. I was doing my thing, loving the agency life, even though it was a risk. And that was the best thing I could have done, man, because I went from tech to CPG. So I worked on Old Spice. And when I joined Old Spice, it was before the big campaign. And for
Right.
those who don't remember, Old Spice used to be like a dead brand. It's like
it was a legacy band. It's, it's what your grandpa smelled like.
Yep. Number 3 in the market.
Shave, yeah.
Yeah, it was boring. And then,
but it was still a big CPG company, right? Because it had a demo.
P&G. Yeah. And they could sell product, but it was not relevant at all. And then P&G, White and Kennedy was our creative agency. I was on influencer marketing agency. They came up with the idea, the guy on a horse, and we did the 200 videos, and it crushed it. That was it. He's got
a great story too, the guy on the horse too. And I'm going to butcher the story here, but I think he was like a struggling actor, and he was like the last guy, right? He was like the last guy to come in for the audition, and like there's a whole story behind him.
So
which is pretty cool.
So Isaiah Mustafa, I spent a lot of time with him. He was a former football player, played the Broncos, I think, and the Seahawks. Didn't have much of a career, went into acting. Obviously, very charismatic, good-looking guy, and had a great career ahead of him. But he tried out actually for the first time and didn't get it. But then he begged his way in, and he called Jake Plummer, who was a former Broncos quarterback, and asked him for advice. And he tested it on his voice machine. And
he tested his voice. Right, that's not his. Like he puts on an accent. He changes his voice a little bit for that role.
That's right. And he went back in a second time, and it's a great metaphor for life, right? Like went back in a second time, crushed it, and not only did he get it, like now he became that guy. I mean, he had all these things open up as a result of that role.
It's amazing. It's like around. It's like the not the Cuervo guy, the most interesting man in the world, right? Like
similar.
It's a similar thing too, right? So now you're like mid-career, right? You're like you're getting the hang of this thing. You're building it, right? You're building up a rep there. Like, let's pause for a second there. Like, were you starting to manage people? Did you have a team underneath you? Let's talk a little bit about that. What was that first experience when you were managing a team? Like some fuck ups, right? Some like, all right, I got this kind of thing where you're like, how did you learn how to lead people?
I had a lot of fuck ups, man. I still fuck up, to be honest, man. I fuck up more than I do things right, but that's part of the experience. My first time was actually a WagEd in like Seattle. I think when I went to T-Mobile, I managed one person. I'll never forget. I was 26 and it was my birthday. I'll never forget this, man. And I invited a bunch of my friends and invited some people from work, including my new direct report, just started for me like a week before. I was pretty drunk with my friends, and I kept saying, "Hey, this is Kirsten, my direct report." I kept saying it like a jackass at my birthday party. And then later on, she told me like, "Yeah, it's kind of awkward. You kept saying that." I'm like, "Dude, it was so like." I don't know what I was thinking. Now I'm like, I would never introduce anyone.
No.
Like that. At the time, I was just so excited to.
Yeah, now you say this is my team member. This is our team.
Colleague. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, but you gotta be PC.
It was so stupid. It was just so like, what was I thinking? I was young and drunk and excited. So I'm sure everyone was like, what's he saying? So that was an interesting learning for me.
Yeah, I mean, early on, was there that one person that you looked up to, like as a mentor, that you really learned from?
Yeah, actually, he's a good friend of mine now. He lives in New York now too. His name is Rowan. He was the lead on the team. He recruited me to come to T-Mobile. At the time, I was leaving Microsoft, working on Microsoft mobile phones, which Microsoft had a big budget. You know, they're doing a lot of stuff with mobile phones, and T-Mobile at the agency side at least wasn't huge. It was like a third of the budget, small team, and I had to move to Seattle, and I was nervous about that. My first move for a job. And since then, I moved like several times for my job. And he told me in an interview, he's like, "Jackson, I've lived all around the world for my job. I've moved around for my job. I've left things behind, people behind. And I can tell you, as scary as nervous it is, if you feel good about the people and the team and the role, it's the best thing you can do for your career. Even if it doesn't work out, that learning, that experience, you jump off that cliff a little bit with a little bit of a gut that's going to work out okay, one way or the other." And I did it, man. And he was right. He convinced me. And then ever since then, he became a mentor to me.
I love it. And like trusting your gut is something that,
oh, dude.
Oh, man, it's everything. And then once you get to a stage in life where, because listen, as you and I both know, as fathers, parents, you need to rely that with so many external factors in the world and so many things out of our control, you learn how much to trust your gut, right? And I always say my gut's about 95% right. Like sometimes I shit some stuff out, right? and it's not so good if I want to use a metaphor, but you really have to trust your gut. So now we're going mid-career. You spent some time out west. How did Chipotle come around? I might be skipping a step or two in there.
It's all good. Yeah. I went to another agency for 5 years, built a digital marketing practice, working with clients like Taco Bell, Papa John's, Starbucks, Jordan Brand, and Chipotle was hiring for a head of digital. And they saw that experience. They wanted someone who came from either agency or in-house, which it doesn't always happen, right? A lot of times if you're in-house, they only want in-house experience, which is why I always tell agency people, like, think about that, But I got lucky. The hiring manager came from CAA, came from agency life. He's like, I like that pace, and I want someone with some QSR background. And who's deep on digital, which I feel like I'm an OG.
You checked the boxes there, right? It was the right place at the right time with the right experience.
Yeah. But Adam, I hustled my way into that, man. This is a learning for any of you younger, for anyone, any age. Actually,
tell us how you did this, man.
So 15 years of agency at this point, right? It is hard to go from agency in-house. You know that. Unless your client, takes you, it's hard. You don't get those looks, right? Even if you could be the best person, but you just don't get the looks.
It's almost like a stigma, right? It's almost like
for
a
sure
stigma.
it is.
Like it's like the brand people, right? When I went from agency to Amex, I remember just to pause for a second there, people were looking at me, they're like, an agency guy. This guy doesn't have his B school degree. Like I remember my first day at Amex, 3 people came up to me within the first hour, like, "Oh, nice to meet you." And I've been working like 10, 11 years at that point, and they go, "What B school did you go to? Not what company did you come? What the fuck are you talking about?" And then when they once they found out that I went to a SUNY Buffalo, and I had like a 2.6 GPA, and I have the same job as him, actually making more because anyway. So we digress. So
no,
for
those
that don't know, like we talk about this too. The agency background is desirable because there's a hustle there. There's a sense of urgency. There's a speed, and also the ability to multitask and bring people together. So that's a very attractive trait. And when a hiring manager sees these traits and can apply them to the in-house, which is typically a little bit slower pace. But the other thing is you still have to build and develop those interpersonal relationships in there. So you have this hiring manager that's on your side.
Yeah. And dude, also, by the way, is there any job that trains you better to communicate? I know when I talk to agency people, they over communicate. They're like project manage shit, even if they don't want to. Like they're just great communicators, man. Because you have to your clients.
What I learned, the number one thing that I always say that I learned in agency life that I applied as a recruiter is the concept of managing expectations. That is a fundamental backbone to account management, whether you're in sales, biz dev, whatever you're doing, managing expectations. And I learned that early on, and that you could apply to everything.
For sure. So in this job, I was an agency guy. I wasn't getting the looks from recruiter. They had internal recruiter, not external. So I saw a post on LinkedIn, and this doesn't always happen. And luckily, sometimes LinkedIn shows who posted it. So I found the recruiter. I hit her up. I sent her a message after like a week of posting it, and I sent her like a long, heartfelt note. She responded, and then I sent another note as a follow up. I never heard back from her. I'm like, okay, but so about a month went by, and then I'm like, fuck this. So it said reports to head of integrated marketing. So luckily, Chipotle was relatively small. I found that guy. There's only one. Like, he's got to be the hiring manager. I hit him up with a very long email. Yeah. And I said, here's why I'm a perfect fit, blah, blah. Here's my skill sets. I basically pulled out the bullets of the JD and nothing. No response. He added me on LinkedIn, but no response.
I know you saw me, motherfucker.
Yeah, right.
I know you saw me.
If there was a red note, like I know he read it. I know. And now, he and I talked about it actually after he hired me. So 3 months go by, dude. So now I'm into January. I posted September was when I started. So I'd forgotten about the role, right? I've been looking aggressively. I had some issues come up with the agency side. I was like, I got to get the fuck out of here. And you never want to get to this point, right? Where you're so unhappy. You wake up dreading going in. Luckily, that's only happened once. I need to get the fuck out. And then you start making bad moves. I was like, don't. I was told this a long time ago, don't run away from something, run to something. Even if what you're running away from is so bad. Unless you're really feeling like, unless it's so bad where your mental health is at risk. But this wasn't there, but I just was unhappy. My ego took in and so forth. So 4 months went by, dude. And I'm like, no leads. And you know how this is in job search. You can go like 4 weeks, nothing. And then one day, 5 leads come in, right? It's shit how it works. So I got this call from Denver, and I'm like, Denver, all right, but it's unknown number. You know how this when you're looking for a job, any unknown number, I'm answering this shit, and the half the time it's like fucking spam, salespeople. So I pick it up, and like, hey, this is Adam from Chipotle, and I'm like, oh, and I can perk up, my voice gets higher.
Mr. Jackson, how may I help you?
What can I do?
As you put the beer down.
Yeah. So the long story short, he's like, hey, I got your note forwarded to me. I'm sorry it's taking so long. We've been in the process. We had 10,000 applicants. I'm like, Jesus, this is when Chipotle was at that peak, right before the food crisis. And he's like, we want to bring you in for interview. And it was like, I must have interviewed 12 people, 2 days in Denver, 2 different days in Denver over 3 months. And they told me this is going to be a 4-month
gauntlet.
Oh, dude, brutal. They're like, be prepared. I'm like, okay, I'm prepared. But it was Chipotle, man. That was the
Rocky training montage, right?
I did. This is my Mr. T, right? And then I ended up getting the job, and they told me like, hey, my boss said like, I saw your email. I didn't respond to you, but I forwarded it to HR. And to me, all of that is, Adam, is like, that was just hustle, man. Like I tracked it down. It's a thin line between stalking and being over aggressive.
Persistence is subjective, right? Like
exactly,
right? Like, and you have to figure out that balance of not being a stalker, but at the same time, it's your job search. And anyone in HR and recruiting knows that you're going to get bombarded all day by follow-ups. But it's about the tone, the messaging, and how you handle yourself.
Exactly right. Well said. And that's what happened there. And I got very lucky. And dude, within 2 weeks, I never, not once, Adam, I tell you this, had I gotten any in-house opportunities, even though I had a great resume, great clients, well-networked. 2 weeks into Chipotle, I literally had 2 job opportunities coming to me in my first 2 weeks, one from Subway, one from another one. I'm like, wow,
they
like that.
They tried to coach you immediately once you started there and it came up.
Yep.
So So Chipotle, like what was the draw there for you, man? Like what was like how did they hook you in? I know you wanted to go in-house, right? And we were talking before about like you getting to the stage in life where you're not jumping and making like real like emotional decisions. Like what was a rational decision behind that decision?
It was three things. The role was exactly what I wanted. It was the right next step. It was head of digital. I was already doing digital agency side. It was a brand I loved and everyone loved, right? So it was
it's a good brand. Was that
It
before
is.
they were purchased by McDonald's?
After they divested, after
Right,
McDonald's divested them. Yeah. And I would say, Adam, this is also learning though. At that time in my career, I was just chasing sexy brands. And I've learned this the hard way, right? It's just the name, right? The brand. And sometimes that works out, but a lot of times it doesn't, or a lot of times it's not as what you expected. So this
grass
is a case
not always greener, right? Just because the grass looks greener from my side of the fence and your grass looks shiny, right? And all well manicured doesn't mean shit. Well, you come over the fence, right? And there's piles of dog shit everywhere that you can't see.
Right. How many people do you know? Like, I'd love to work. I'm not going to say any companies, this brand. And you meet with people from that brand, like, yeah, it's, the founder sucks, or like this happened over here. I'm like, wow, so, I don't judge anymore based on that. I judge on the hiring manager. Hiring manager is fucking everything. Even if you're a CEO of the board, it's everything, right? So in this case, it was the brand, it was the role. And then honestly, dude, I knew I needed to get in-house, but it was the opportunity to build something out at a brand that was well known. So for instance, like my Jordan brand clients, this is Jordan brand, dude, like one of my favorite brands. I'm a sneakerhead. They were like,
there's no more iconic brand in America.
Yeah. And they were like, wow, we're kind of jealous of you. You're going to Chipotle. I'm like, dude, that's crazy. Like, and I'm like, you're Jordan brand. Like, yeah, but Chipotle's got like a magic right now that no one else has. And people forget, like before the food crisis, Chipotle was it, man. That was the effing brand. That was like,
people were moving away from they're moving away from Subway. They wanted something more fresh, but the fast cash, right? Like, what was kind of that in between, right? It was like that in between restaurant where it's still good quality. The brand stood for good quality before the food situation.
Exactly, it was all about the product. The product experience is dope, and
product led. The branding was clean. And right, the stores were cool, right? The brand was minimal. The stores were cool. It didn't look like a McDonald's, right? It didn't look like that shit.
And they didn't do TV, so there was also a little bit of like this like magic, right? There was like you didn't really
see
a lot
of word of mouth.
Yeah, McDonald's, Burger King, always on your TV. Chipotle, it was like, oh yeah, Chipotle is dope. Yeah, and it was like 2,000 stores, not 20,000, or at that time probably 1,500. So yeah, dude, it was all those things that was opportunity. Now, obviously, 6 months in, the food crisis hit, everything changed, but I learned more from that, Adam, than probably all the things I did right. You know what I mean?
So how long you were out in Denver, right? Cool city.
No, New York actually. I was in Denver a lot, but they had a New York office at the time.
Right. So how long did you spend there?
About a year and a half. So I left about a year after the food crisis. I just didn't believe in the leadership at the time, which then eventually got switched out. They brought in Brian Niccol, who's an amazing CEO, but at that time, I just didn't believe they could get back for a lot of reasons.
So I know a little bit about the Box story because I was following it when they were kind of emerging. But why don't you fill us in how Box kind of started and what drew you over there?
Yeah, so a recruiter hit me up and they were like, hey, we got this opportunity at Box. And I had never heard of it, but I started talking to some friends and it had this like vibes like 2016, I think. And they started in 2013.
What stage were they there? So it's 3 years in.
They just done the C round, finished the C round. So that's why they had the money to pay for a few more executives. They hired a CFO from Square and Intel. They hired a great chief merchandising officer from like Sam's Club. So they had a great team. But the four founders, as you know, and as for your audience who doesn't know, came from, they started a company called a gaming company, sold to Zynga after a couple of years, made a little bit of money, all former lawyers, almost all of them, and said, F law, I don't want, started their first job. Again. Yeah, exactly. And one of them started their job like literally a month after the financial crisis. So he was like, I'm out of here. Like, this isn't going to work after Lehman collapsed. And they started coming in the garage, like, there's got to be a better way than what Costco's doing. This is before Costco launched e-com. Like, we can do this. We can figure this out. So they launched in the garage and went from like 40,000 to almost 100 million in 3 years. Like, they crushed it. And that's when they brought me in. Oh, dude, it was insane. And they also did a little bit on doing things differently, right? So Chipotle, I always say, was value driven, right? So driven by a value of food with integrity, food that you can believe in, right? You said the product. Box was values driven, right? It wasn't necessarily about one thing that we're going to do. It's like how we treat our people, how we treat the customer. We're going to go about this the right way. We're going to pay for people's college education for their kids. We're going to pay for their weddings. We're going to refund you a tax on tampons that in ridiculous ways treated as a luxury in 29 states. So things like that were very different for the industry, and they created a name for themselves as a result.
They were disruptor. Do us a quick education check here. How do you define brand? What's your definition of brand?
That's a good question. I would say brand is what an organization or a person stands for, not only in reality, but in perception. What they are, what they do, how they do it, and why they do it, right? So the why, Simon Sinek, is critical, but it's also how and what. And it has nothing to do with logos, aesthetics, packaging. That's all the output. So to me, it's what you do, how you do it, and why you do it.
And how do you stand out and differentiate? Because that's what
That's
kind of
right.
triggered in this conversation for me, because you're talking about Box and how they differentiated internally and externally. Externally, they differentiated, right? Because they were the first, big box e-com DTC, right? We're not talking about one off Amazon, and then we talk about internally how they treated their employees differently.
Yep.
And your employees are everything. I mean, you know this, right? When those employees feel part of the organization,
Oh,
how much harder they work, how you feel part of
dude.
that family. Like, what was that feeling like at Box, like 3 years into the successful startup, the energy, the vibe? What was that like, man?
No, I'd never been in a startup. Agency was the closest, and that's exactly what everyone thinks and why people go to startup. It was that. It was like a lot of autonomy. It was very personable. It was like a family, right? For better or worse, right? Family can also be fucking complicated at a workspace, right? But it was really just like personal. And there was this unique place where we need to get to the next level. And everyone was bought in. Everyone wanted to see this thing grow and exit and have a good path. What we sold and what we did wasn't like that mind blowing, right? It was pretty simple. Unit economics were tough, but it was just, we were all part of it. We were all in it to win it. And it was a really, really cool vibe and experience. And to your point, you can't be customer first if you're not employee first. Think about it. How many times you've been in Uber, and even though that's a commodity, those drivers are driving for Lyft via Juno.
Right.
You have a bad Uber experience, that's on Uber, not on that driver, right?
So like, you relate that to Uber. Yeah,
absolutely, and that goes across anything, even on Amazon or Box, where you never meet with or talk to a person. It's still that shit comes to your door, and the detergent spilled on your baby food. That happened to me once. Cans broken. It doesn't matter what the reason is. That's Box.
That's on them.
Employees.
It doesn't matter that the FedEx guy freaking tripped over
Doesn't matter.
Box.
Yeah.
That's
so. How can you be customer first if you're not employee first? And I think Box figured that out.
And how long did you spend at Box before you jumped over to Clorox?
About 2.5 years. Had some funding challenges and trying to figure out what the next step was. And that Forbes list came out, and it just felt like the right time to start exploring what the next thing could be. And I walked away from equity, man. I walked away from a good amount of equity. It was a tough decision.
That is tough, but you have to make those tough. But so what your gut was telling you that this was the time, and sometimes you got to leave money on the table.
You do. I mean, people don't realize that, right? And Chipotle is a great example, dude. I took a 32% pay cut at Chipotle, and I was coming from agency side on base
to go to Chipotle,
to go in-house. So I didn't mention this earlier, and I had my first kid on the way, and I was terrified. My wife was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I'm like, "I think I need to go in-house. I need that experience. I know it's a pay cut, but the bonus and stock will make up for it." That went underwater because of the food crisis. So in theory, I would have made more, but reality, I didn't. Yeah. But it was the best thing I could have done.
And let's pause on that for a second, because here's a lesson for a lot of young folks. And I have this conversation a lot, especially when I'm talking to junior to mid-level, and these folks are going from their second to third job, right? And a lot of them are so focused on the compensation versus the opportunity. Yes. And I beat it in over their heads. And I say this to them: $10,000 difference in a job over the course of 26 paychecks minus taxes and everything is nothing. And I'm not here to count your money. I'm not telling you how much money you need, but I want you to just put it in perspective. You can't look at a salary like that in terms of $10,000 increments. You really, truly have to evaluate the long-term opportunity. And some roles, maybe you have the foresight or not, are going to help you get to that next level higher and quicker, those interim roles. And I'm like, listen, I'm telling you this from experience. Listen, I want you to make more money. I get fucking compensated on how much you make, right? I'm a recruiter. But I'm telling you this because I care about you and your career.
Dude, let's stay on this for a minute, because I have this talk all the time. I go to NYU, Columbia Classic. I think it's such an interesting topic. So what I find, especially young folks, they get caught up on title and base salary comp. So a few things, right? Comp, first off, as you know, especially if you go to big companies, everything. It's bonus stock. You have to keep that in consideration. Startup is a little bit different. Yeah, it's all in. Startup is a little different. But when you go to a big company, they're going to sell you on the total comp. And there's a reason those people stay there for so long. That stock starts adding up. Even if it's a stock that's okay, it adds up, man. So that's one. Secondly, title, for the most part, title mostly is ego and external perception. Yeah, for your next role, that might matter. But for the right role and responsibilities, if you can articulate it to a recruiter, you're good. Now, in some bigger companies, that hierarchy doesn't matter. But for the most part, you can figure that out. But you're right. The comp, though, is where people get hung up. And I've watched people walk away from great roles with me and without me from $5,000. I'm like, what are you doing right now? Like, think about the big picture. Think about, is this the right manager? Are you going to get the opportunities? Is this the right career progression for you, even for 2-3 years? And thirdly, are you going to enjoy it? Are you going to have fun? You cannot put a fucking value on that. For people like you and me who have been in places where you're so unhappy, making good money, it doesn't matter. And that paycheck comes every 2 weeks, and you feel like shit 80 hours of those weeks.
Dude, I jumped from Sirius XM to American Express for 25 grand more, which was a lot back then for me. And I was miserable on day one, and I stuck it out for a year and a half before going back to agency world.
Yep, I do. I mean, people just lose sight of the big picture. I know. You get bills, and I get that, right? In some cases, if you are in a really tough position, you got to do what you got to do. But in most cases, I know the people who are leaving, they're not, like, you're right, 5,000, 10,000. You do that math on that, right? You're talking about like 2,000, 4,000 a month with taxes. You're talking about a few $100 a paycheck. So unless that is material, and it could be, unless it is,
it could be,
you got, and it could be, right? So there's maybe 25% of the people, the other 75%, think big picture, because that money will come, the opportunities will come. But if you start jumping, and nothing against jumping, that's the bigger trend now.
Right.
But if you start doing just for the paycheck, I tell you where you end up. You end up like in this wheel, in this cycle, and it will cap out. And then all of a sudden you find yourself like, I don't know what to do in my career. And then guess what happens? Then you might have to take a much bigger step back to reset.
And it happens a lot in the agency world, and I'm glad I got out of that too, right? Because you're an account director here, and you're going to go to account, like that's a game. They say 2 years at each agency, and you're going in a downward spiral. So let's keep the train moving here, and let's get on the Clorox train. How did this come about, and what's happening over there these days?
Yeah, dude. So talking about the sexy brands, right? Box was sexy, right? Chipotle was sexy. Clorox pre-COVID especially was not, right? So in fact,
like another legacy brand, household item, everyone had to buy it. Consistent sales, right? Like Steady Eddie, people buying Clorox, they need it.
For
Industrial,
sure.
residential, commercial, doesn't matter.
Good EPS. It's not a growth brand. It's not volatile. Very, very no risk, right? Which is not me. I'm more like you, like tattoos and beard, and like I'm just not my style. So I'm like, the recruiter hit me up, didn't say the brand, it's a Fortune 500, but a GM role. And I was starting to think about shifting from the CMO path to the CEO path, and it was perfect timing. And I wasn't going back to business school, so I was like, there's not going to be many roles like this that's going to give me that break. And it's a CPG, so I'm going to learn some great things. I'm not going to get in business school because I'm not going. So it's the best of both worlds.
Right.
But it was Clorox. And at that time, it was moved to DC. I had to move to DC, which, I was a New Yorker for 12 years. My wife, 15 years, met there, had our 2 kids there. Like, it's in my heart, right? Like, all the people saying New York's dead, like, don't get me started on that fucking topic. So anyway, I'm like, I'm ride or die for New York, And then he was like, hey, the roles in DC and Clorox. And I'm like, let's pump the brakes on this one. Like, I don't want to go to a CPG. I was interviewing with like Airbnb and Shake Shack and Etsy and Grubhub, all the typical kind of companies you think based on my career. Yeah, especially coming from Box and Chipotle, that makes sense for me. DoorDash and so forth. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. And then I met with the manager, man. He said, just have breakfast with the guy. He's coming to New York, have breakfast with him. And I'm like, you know what? I always say never, have the meeting.
I always say take the call, take the meeting.
Take the call, dude. Why not, right?
Always take the call. One call changes your life.
Exactly. You just never know. It's like dating. It's not the same thing as dating. No different. So I had the breakfast with him on the 7 a.m. He had the 3 other candidates. I know, and back to back, I was the first. And I remember I was in Tel Aviv doing a keynote for a company, actually, where I had the first recruiter call for an hour, and he was grilling me. That recruiter call was way harder than any of the interviews. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. And I met my hiring manager, my boss now, who is like my second mentor. I've had 2 mentors, 3 really, my whole career, and he's been my third. And right away I knew, I'm like, wow, I will learn a lot. He was 30 years in Clorox, but he thought like a VC. He was he invests in companies, very much like me, but not. And I'm like, dude, this guy is awesome. And we both know managers make or break. People just forget that. Like, your manager, doesn't matter what level you are, your manager is a big part of your career. Like, I can learn from this guy. And I haven't had that in a long time, to be honest, Adam.
At this stage of your career, like you needed that kick, right? Like I always say too, like Serena Williams, Beyonce, Tiger Woods, like all the people at the top of their careers and profession, they need that coach, they need that mentor to take them to the next level.
For sure. Any top athlete, LeBron. I mean, LeBron has people like that, right? So he's like top of the top. So yeah, same thing. And I did it, dude. I was interviewing a couple other startups for CEO roles, like pre-revenue. And this guy, like, he made it clear, so I'm going to move fast. And you're a CPG. It's going to take 3 months. He's like, I'm going to do this in 2 weeks. 2 days later, I had 6 interviews, all video. I didn't have to fly to Oakland, got the offer 4 days later. I negotiated up on a signing bonus. I got aggressive on a couple of things. And, there's a whole art to negotiations. Adam, a lot of people forget and they sell themselves short and they get worried. If I ask for more money, I'm going to lose my job offer. It's like, God, what are you doing? At this point, they want you. So you can ask for a lot.
Yeah, it's called leverage. It's called leverage.
Exactly. And sometimes they want to do it early. I'm like, don't do it till they want you and focus on 1 or 2 things. Don't ask for everything, but you will get something. They're not going to be like, worst case, they say no. Best case, you get it, but no one's going to pull an offer. And if they did, that's not the company you want to work for because you asked for a little bit more money. So
exactly.
So he and I negotiated, and I liked the process. I liked the way he was handling. He was very practical. You always should equate, this more than anyone, the interview process with what the company's going to be like. If you start to see flags in that, that's probably how the company operates.
Pause on that for a second. That's a really important thing, and I haven't talked about it in a while. The hiring process is indicative of how a company operates. If a company puts people first and the way they manage it, the way the initial recruiter has that conversation, and the way they guide you through the process is so telling. Spot on.
Yep. And the manager's ability to influence that. If you're senior enough, like Clorox is a little bit slower normally, but he made that faster. He's like, I'm going to make it faster. So it was telling, is he going to be a champion? Is he going to say what he's going to do and do what he says? And he did, man. He fucking backed it up, but he was very clear. He was like, hey, I want to know if I go back and ask for more on this, you're not using me for leverage. Yeah.
Like if I go back and champion for you, I want to know that you're going to accept this offer. Otherwise, you make me look like a dick.
Yeah, don't use me for another offer. And I thought that was, and I've done this tactic a lot too. That's what you need to do as a hiring manager. I'm like, you know what? That was a great call. I'm glad you put me on the spot. And it was work, right? I could have still fucked him, but that would have been really, that's just not a cool thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small world too. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be, and especially at the senior levels.
No.
When other opportunities. No, we all back channel there. So you're at Clorox now. How long have you been at Clorox for?
So a year and a half. I came on, as you know, to oversee the GM of a pure play D2C brands they'd acquired, but also really more importantly, to take that knowledge and learning and to build a team around it, which I've done, and then scale it for all the Clorox retail brands. Launched Burt's Bees, Brita. At the time, we didn't know cleaning was going to be so big. And then, of course, COVID hits, and we can talk about that. But my goal was really to assess what the problem was, that what they inherited wasn't performing well, which I did. We built a custom tech stack. I hired a great bunch of executives and managers now from Plated, Amazon, Living Social, Brandless, top startups.
So your mindset, and correct me if I'm wrong here, as far as the people that you hired, was to bring in people with some of that entrepreneurial spirit mentality versus your traditional CPG B school kind of marketers. Yep. And that's what helped change the culture of your team and guide the trajectory of success of the product, correct?
And even exactly, and even positively impacting Clorox culture as well. And we do have people on our team who come from B school and have that classic, but Clorox has that in spades also.
Right, because that classic training is important there when you're dealing with a lot of the academics of the data, right? You need some of those mindsets to really be the true analyst, right? To really be able to look at the numbers and combine it with the business insights. That's a critical cut. We're not trying to undersell the B school experience as well, but you have to have that mix. So you're kind of having this team of the best of the best.
Yeah. So I got a bunch of startup kids who were who had one thing. Because listen, I tried to recruit some great startup people I know who respected me. I respected them, but they're like, I don't want to go to a big company. No matter what I was telling them, it was like, I love startups. So those people,
they didn't want that. They didn't want that.
Going. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Even if I'm like, I got this little island, I got my team here. We're going to be in New York, building an office. But it doesn't matter because if you love Peloton, you love building and scaling at a certain, you know how it is, right? It's just like agency people. If you love it, there's nowhere you're leaving. But I had a bunch of people like me who'd done 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like, I like it, but I don't like this part of it. Yeah. I was given the best of both worlds: autonomy, speed, building it, but with the resources of a big, great VC. We never had to go worry about fundraising. We never had to worry about cash flow.
We had that, right? Pieces. Yeah, that security blanket. I love it, man. So COVID hits. Let's jump to COVID for a minute here, right? Like COVID hits, and all of a sudden, the Windexes, the Cloroxes, all the cleaning products are top. There's a run on everything, right? There's the product, strain on the supply chain and everything. What was that like in March when you're like, holy shit, this product has now been elevated to a name brand immediate need? What was that like?
I mean, listen, I wasn't working yet closely with cleaning at the time. I was really focused on the health and wellness. So even our brands, like immunity products they were spiking. We couldn't keep them in stock. So that was our own problem.
It was apocalyptic buying.
Oh, dude, people wanted immunity.
I need every Burt's Bees chapstick in inventory now.
God, right. Right. So the cleaning team, they're still working hard, right? You've probably seen our announcements for our CEO about working on the supply and demand, trying to get to meet all the great demand we've had. So good problem to have, right? A shitty scenario and a very scary scenario, but really good problem to have from a company standpoint. So it was a lot of learning. That team is working very hard. But what was really interesting from a broader perspective, dude, is, as you know, D2C e-commerce, we all know it was here with Amazon and Instacart, but it hadn't hit maturity, right? Especially in the Midwest and the South, right? Coast, everyone like you and me are shopping, but it's still a lot of people in a lot of areas who are don't trust getting their fruit and vegetables delivered to their door and things like that at scale, right? Until this happened. And now, what I think was going to be a 3 to 5 year more timeline of true mature maturation and getting to that critical mass is now, right? The next year, omni-channel everything, dude, because of COVID. So that's where it accelerated my team and the e-commerce team, which is really the sales team that focuses on selling our products on Amazon and Box. But my team, direct to consumer, right? That also accelerated. Now, how many companies are launching right now? And now what was really neat is internally, I think everyone realized wow, there's such huge potential for us. And unlike a lot of other CPGs who are just trying to start it now, we had already started it. We've been building this for a year and a half. So we're already months away from launching a bunch of new brands. So
yeah. What was the the top innovation, whether it be a process or a product or a mindset that came out of COVID over the last 8 months on your team?
Speed. My team always moved fast, but it was speed. It was cutting down the priorities, even though we had a good amount, a good short list. Cut it down even further. These 3 things, and make decisions quicker and cut me out of meetings. Right? Don't let me be a bottleneck. Just make a fucking call.
That's good management. That's strong management here. So I want to bring it home here. When you interview people on your team, is there 1 or 2 go-to questions that you always ask, and why do you ask them?
There's three things I look for, and then I back my way into it, and I adjust based on the person. So I look for versatility, someone who can just do different things, because if shit hits the fan or things change our business or our economy or market, I need you to know that you can't just be like, I only do this job, right? That's not how it works.
Yeah, you can't have your blinders on. Yep.
No, man, you gotta be able to be versatile and open-minded to learning new things, just like a startup. Curiosity. I don't want yes men and women.
Inquisitivity. Being inquisitive is my number one skill trait that I look for.
Ask questions, right? Push back, challenge me, but don't be a dick about it. So my third one's empathy, right? Be respectful. If you're going to push back, you don't have to have, listen, people think a nice culture is good. Nice culture is bad because that's passive aggressive. People don't want to get into it. I'd rather work at a hedge fund, or at least where I'm getting railroaded and run over. At least I see it coming. So I'd actually argue being passive aggressive and being a nice culture is the worst thing. And I've learned that from some companies. I won't say names that I worked at. So I ask for empathy. So the three things I look for are those three. And then I'll back my way into like problem solving. I never ask for hard skills, unless it's a direct report of mine. Now I have my exec team. So I'm assuming that they've
already fleshed that out. Right? If someone's getting to you at this point, you know that they're qualified to do the job on paper.
Absolutely.
Now you need to know who they are, right? You need to know who this person is.
Yeah. And am I going to be in a foxhole with you, right? Yeah. If it's 60 of us in a foxhole on Slack, late night when you're stressed, I want to know you're going to deal with the problem head on and not be passive aggressive, not Slack emoji, some weird shit, not talk shit behind people's back, not screenshot past combos.
Oh, it's the worst.
Oh, dude, like don't do that.
The screenshot's another shitty thing. Camera phone screenshots.
All that shit. So like for me, I interview everyone, intern to VP. And now that I have my core team, my direct reports, I never interview hard skills. I'm always about the person, the people. So one question I ask, for instance, is like, if you could be a god or God, whatever you believe in, what would be the first thing you would do? Could be anything, and there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer.
Right, but you
really
want to see how
they break down the problem, and do they think about themselves or the world, and why? And if you think about yourself, that's fine too. I'm just curious on why you chose that. So that's just a question I throw out. Sometimes I'll throw out a real scenario. I'm like, hey, how would you deal with this? Something that happened recently.
So a real behavioral based interview type question.
Yeah, to get to how they respond, but I like to throw them off too. So like I always ask them things like, hey, what's the biggest deal breaker when it comes to a culture? Because everyone said, what do you look for in a culture? I say, what's the thing that you hate the most? And what I found is when you get people talking about things they don't like, the first question is always like, oh, well, I don't like when, something's just, superficial.
Right.
But I dig there. And then once you get people start talking about any kind of pet peeves or things they don't like, usually they open up, and then I get to the real answer. I'm like, okay. This is the thing that
do you always stroke the beard though when you go, yes, all right, gotcha.
I do probably more than my wife would like.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
no, that's awesome, man. So let's bring it home here. This has been an awesome conversation, and literally it's just been chock full of freaking knowledge nuggets and bombs here.
And you talk faster than I do, and that's rare. But probably you're a New Yorker.
I'm a jive talking motherfucker. Right. What does the word authentic mean to you, Jax?
Just being real, no matter what's happening. In fact, being real when you're gonna suffer for it, whether it's professionally or personally. You know what I mean? Like if you can be real not when it's fun to be real, when everyone else is. It's like when you have to do the thing that no one else is doing. It's gonna make you look bad, put you in a tough position, impact you negatively. That's fucking authentic, man.
Yeah. What's the single greatest piece of advice you've ever received that you take action on every single day?
I didn't receive it directly, but Kobe, I'm a big Kobe fan. When he passed, really hit me hard for a lot of reasons, but and less about even on the basketball court, more everything else behind. He always said, not to me, but to everyone, be better, right? Every day, the next day, be better than you were the day before. And that is not a sports thing. That is a life thing. Be better dad, be a better husband, partner, friend, colleague, citizen. And that goes back to being authentic. If I can just be better, just a little bit better, I'm good, man. Then I'll feel really good.
I love it, man. What would you say is your superpower? What do you do better than almost anyone on this planet that makes you who you are?
I surround myself with people with better superpowers than me.
I love that. That's a great freaking answer. And we've been talking a lot. It's October 2nd, and I've been having this conversation, the same question for 8 months. I can't believe this. During the pandemic, there's been a lot of silver linings. A lot of good things have happened, because I want to end the show on a positive note. Like, tell me something good here. Jax, leave us with a personal silver lining and a professional silver lining.
Oh, my personal silver lining is every day I wake up to the two most beautiful humans I've ever met and encountered. My two daughters, my 5-year-old Sophie and my 16-month-old Adley. The genuine, you know how it is with kids, in the eyes. People say this, but until you have them and you see them, like the innocence, the learning, just the love they have for each other and for us. Like, dude, there's nothing like it. So no matter what happens, man, I could be unemployed, and even if we're homeless, God forbid, I have them. As long as I can take care of them and give them something better than I had, it's not just financial, it's everything. dude, like that is my personal silver lining, period. Professional silver lining, it's not that different, dude. It's I like people, if you could tell. Like, so I will always value people over anything else. I also truly believe the best productivity, the best work gets done with people. It's not bullshit, man. Culture's not beer pongs and free lunch. That shit is output tactics. You can work in a fucking prison with 10 people and not see the light of day. But if you have great people around you with the same mindset, it doesn't mean that they're the same as yours and mine, or you could have different values and have the same people like that with you. That's okay. Whatever those values are that you care about, being around people like that, getting the energy. And for me, it's about being real, genuine, just being direct, honest, but also empathetic, man. Like, we can accomplish anything. I could sell widgets. I could go hopefully find a cure for something, or sell, cleaning products and wellness products. And it won't matter. It's the people, man. So similar to my daughters, it's really just, I want to be around people. That's why this has been tough. Even though I spend more time with my family, I miss that, just the social piece with people.
We'll get back there. People want to get back to work. That's beautiful. And last but not least, right? Listen, not every day is amazing, right? We have some rough days. Yeah. You're at the top, man, and sometimes you have to make some tough decisions. Sometimes you have to let people go, and not all days are rosy. And you got to reach down deep inside, like those dark points in your life and your career and everything. You got to find that inner tenacity to pull yourself forward. And on the flip side of that, what we were just talking about, when you're so grateful for everything that you have in your life, your kids, your family, everything that you accomplish and surround yourself with, Jax, what is your North Star? What is your compass?
Honestly, man, it's my gut. If I could stand on the other side, my deathbed or whatever, and say, like, you know what, when that shit was hitting the fan, or I have the tough decisions or things that maybe I regret later, like, can I stand behind the reasoning and why I did it? And was I on the right side of history? And sometimes I'm not, right? But when in doubt, can I just look at this 20 years from now and be like, this is the right thing? And sometimes the right thing could hurt someone, right? It could be tough for someone. But this is the right thing with all things being equal, all things considered, right? Because sometimes you have to make a decision that might be tough for one person, but ultimately it's going to be better for 20 people. And if I don't make the decision now, all 21 people could be impacted. If that makes sense, right? And it's things like that I have to weigh. And I just do my best to okay. And if I'm going to make a tough decision, Adam, let me at least, you don't have to be vicious about it either, right? Like, I've gotten a lot of people I've laid off. I've gotten at least 4 of them jobs, or try to be a reference for them. So of course, people assume like it's just one or the other. It's not a bipolar decision. It's like, hey, I have to make a hard decision, but I can also be a really good person and do everything I can to help this person in whatever means it's possible to get the new job or whatever. So to me, it's that, right? It's not just a decision. It's like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing everything I can? Am I overextending myself? Which really shouldn't be much of a question. It's like, I'm going to do what I can to help people. So for me, that's kind of my North Star.
I love it, man. Jax, thanks for spending some time with us
Thank
today.
you, brother. It was a good time, man. Appreciate it.
Where could folks find you? Where could they connect with you? Where could they learn more?
LinkedIn and Twitter, man. I'm pretty active, more on LinkedIn than Twitter. I'm not able to add people right now. I'm having some issues with connection limits, which sucks. So I'm working on that. I gotta make some updates. But LinkedIn and Twitter, I check often.
That's awesome, man. Thank you. And everybody joining us today, I really hope that you learned from this conversation. It was awesome. I love talking to folks like Jax, who just have such an incredible career and so much to share. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it, subscribe, leave a review, ranking. Help this show blow up. That's what we need here. You know where to find us on thepodcast.com, all the social media channels. Remember, wash your hands, stay 6 feet apart, look out for each other, and catch us next week for another great episode of The Podcast.
To join the conversation, search The Podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.